as well as a board that is ineffective in terms of making resolutions that should be followed up by management and exco within SAA and expect change to happen. Decisions are clearly not made within SAA. There's two offices here which I see in terms of what is currently revealing itself here is you have an office in Miami which completely runs the show within SAA's operation as well as key decision making. You have an office in South Africa, which is in Pretoria, which is in Treasury, that decides on what should happen within the operations of SAA. Then you have another office, which is in Campton Park, which is the SAA's headquarters, which is just a superficial operation center. So, from a transform RSA point of view, if you recall, last year we went over to Campton Park and engaged with the previous then board and engaged with the new incoming board, which at that point there was a lot of hostility with regards to uncovering the current issues happening. We went with a complaint that said there's only 2% black procurement. Now we understand what that 2% block procurement comes from, where the 98% goes out and is made out in terms of decision making overseas. So it explains clearly why there's such a dysfunctionality. But the incapacity of the board to follow up on laying of criminal charges, making sure that they can follow up on the forensic reports that have already been given. 17 forensic reports, totaling to 91 million have been wasted. Here you have a 24 billion organization that has been looted, that has been systematically raped, that has been systematically reduced to an incompetent company that must effectively be sold off. What does that tell you? We have one of the biggest corruption entity and smuggling of cash out of South Africa and stealing of resources of South Africa so that people can benefit and can enrich themselves. And this is something that should not just be seen as a small thing. If you recall, Parliament took decisive decisions against the Nkandla matter. Nkandla was the biggest so-called known corruption scheme which we actually had, where there was undue benefits, which were actually laid upon the president. Now we are seeing a 24 billion money being circulated among key role players within a small company as SAA. What does that tell you within the ranks of who is benefiting within the schemes that have been perpetrated?
Mr. Imam, just in terms of what Dumiani she speaks about radical economic transformation, having had stakeholder engagement roadshows to encourage a transformation or a different complexion to the supply chain process. Would you say that it makes it impossible for her to even effect any changes based on the fact that she doesn't have control of the contracts that have been signed historically and who benefits in this case?
Well, indeed, I think the whole issue of radical economic transformation is a joke. Because we talk about radical economic transformation, and here you can see that South African Airways is controlled by an office in America, or it's controlled by Treasury. And who gets the contracts? Not the small businessmen, not the SMEs, so they're not applying any principles in terms of that to try and transform the economy. Really, there is no plan and intention to do that. So it makes it very difficult for anyone in her position and anyone else that may have a similar interest in trying to transform the economy, in being able to ensure that supply chain management principles are complied with and that we comply in terms of the BEEs and the SMEs and things like that. But clearly you can see here the problem is a lot bigger. Clearly it seems you can see clearly here that South African Airways, the board itself is not in control. They have very little or no power in being able to deal with the matter. We talk about Public Finance Management Act, you can see clearly. And I think one of your guests has just alluded to the fact that over 100 million rand, the executive cannot make those decisions. So the question is, who authorized it? How did we breach the PFMA? So clearly, radical economic transformation, a brilliant idea to transform this economy, and that is why we come back to the same thing again. 3 billion is in South Africa, on an equivalent of 50% of the wealth of South Africa. Nothing is changing. So yes, it is not in the interest of anyone wanting to intervene in this matter. To transform the economy will always have a serious challenge.
South African Airways was put under administration back in 2014, in December of that year. Here's Stephanie now to tell us the relationship between SAA and Treasury.
Thank you so much. Let's take a look at Treasury's involvement in SAA. We do know that SAA was put under Treasury's administration in December of 2014. SAA engages with Treasury on a weekly, a monthly, and a quarterly basis. Taking a look at their weekly meetings, the agenda there is high-level financial concerns, cost compression, and general housekeeping. The responsibility for the agenda of each meeting rests with the Treasury. Let's take a look at the SAA CFO oversees all these meetings. Now we move on to the monthly meetings. The agenda there is strategies and financial results of the previous months. We also take a look at how Treasury is allowed to implement a high-level mitigation as soon as any problem areas are identified. This is attended by the higher levels of management. Now taking a look at their quarterly meetings, the agenda there is reports entailing SAA's financial performance. Reports provided to the National Treasury and the Minister. The Treasury reviews the reports and questions SAA's management. Well, that is Treasury's involvement in SAA. It's back to you in studio.
Thank you, Stephanie Janse van Vuren. According to a question in Parliament in February, there were 12 investigations into SAA since 2014, costing in excess of 20 million rand, which have had various mandates, including looking at tenders, procurement, the sale of leaseback of aircraft, profitability, and why the airline is dependent on bailouts, etc. What is the status of these reports?
Well, ANN7 has had an insight of 2 forensic reports on procurement, and that's what we're discussing today. These are from Ernst & Young. And while the airline continues to make losses, there was the ENS report, and both of these were finalized. Question we're asking to our panelists, what has been done since then? Cecilia?
Well, nothing. I mean, that's it. Nothing. The reports have been there. They're ready to be acted upon. They need to be discussed. The reports that I've read have got very practical solutions to save money just by simply ensuring your accounting practices are up to date and things like that can bring huge savings. But they've done nothing. The fear that they have in one of these, and I think it's quite important, that many of the contracts, I think out of the 52% of the contracts that they were shown in this ENS report only were non-compliant with both supply chain management policy and PFMA. This is a serious allegation. I mean, no, these things need to be acted upon urgently. You know, even if you understand that perhaps there's an agenda to privatize, etc., it's taxpayers' money. It's millions and millions of rands that are going that has not been managed properly.
There are many role players in this saga, you know, and with different interests. But ultimately, I take it that everybody wants to see a healthy SAA. But what needs to happen? Look, what needs to happen is we need to look at the international benchmarking. Airlines across the world are making money. It's SAA suffering. How come is it suffering? We already know the issues internally, but taking it forward in terms of making it successful, we cannot as a country afford to lose a national carrier, first of all, to start off with. We cannot afford to lose a company that has been built on the strength, on the sweat, on the capital of South Africa, sell it off as if it is just something that you're releasing off a balance sheet, which is an impediment to growth of the country. No, we need SAA as a flagship national operator and an international operator, and take it back to its original days of performance, as well as accurate management and ensuring that. But at the current circumstances, as the way things are sitting, it makes it almost impossible. We are talking radical economic transformation. How are we going to ever transform our economy when everything within our economy is completely alienated from us, is sold off, is privatized, is owned by foreign operators, and the white monopoly capital practices and tendencies continues to take control of our economy?